Hello, welcome to an episode of Forgotten Cemeteries, Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Arcade Cemetery. Sadly, no Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat arcade machines. I was really good at the Ninja Turtle ones growing up. Not that it has anything to do with this, but we're located in North Plains, Oregon, Washington County. I think they also refer to this area as the Tualatin Mountains from my readings. Alternative names to the cemetery include Miller and Pumpkin Ridge Cemetery. So let's go meet some of the local, I almost said celebrities, residents, and hear their story. A little history about the cemetery. It was established in 1887 per the Oregon Burial Site Guide. When you pull in though, I think the sign said 1886. I was like, establishment games again. So there's estimated to be 100 to 500 burials. Find the graves showing about 396 memorials to give you an idea. This area is referred to as Pumpkin Ridge, and I've been up here a few times during October, and I'm sure you can guess why. Typically, my wife drags me up here to pick up pumpkins from one of the farms, and I end up carrying them from what feels to be 50 miles, while everyone else rides back to the farm store via the tractor pool. So she thinks it's funny to carry pumpkins that far. Anywho, there's two stories from my understanding on how this area got its name. The first one is the residents of this area drove into Portland in the pioneer days. A Portlander down there asked them where they were from, just making conversations, and they responded, Pumpkin Ridge. So I'm not sure if they just made it up on the spot and it just stuck or what. The second story is that a social gathering took place. Unknown on that date, but every single person apparently brought pumpkin pie. That would be a pretty unique story if true. I guess the name Vinlands was given at one time by a man named George Kelly, but nobody really cared for it. John and Mary Miller donated land for the cemetery in 1887 from their homestead. Maybe it has an establishment date of 1886 because that's when the first burial of Phoebe, Kenon, Bennett, and Baby were buried here. We'll find her marker. Most of the early families are from Kansas and Nebraska from my readings. I believe Hutchison, Kenon, Miller are the more popular last names here, and there's a lot of Civil War headstones, so prep for kind of like a Civil War based video for the most part. Alright, so I think I could talk a little louder now. Sounds like all the animals are waking up near the cemetery, and some woman's yelling at her goats to move or something. So here we have Daniel Hutchison Jr., born in 1827 in Holmes County. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I grew up in Ohio, and I'm pretty familiar with Holmes County. My parents used to drag me there. It's not as bad as it sounds, actually. It's basically nicknamed Amish County back home, and I believe the county is like 40% Amish last I read, and is home to the second largest Amish community in the country. Back to Daniel here. He is a Civil War vet and a fifer, so we have our first musician from the Civil War headstone. So fifers had three primary roles. The first was tactical. This included signals to march, halt, chart, retreat, march at double time, quick time, wheel and fire, etc. The second one was like camp duty. The calls to regulate the camp routine for reveal and dinner to tattoo and lights out. The third was ceremonial, used for formal parades, entertainment of troops, or funeral rites. It is estimated that approximately 40,000 musicians served in the Civil War on both sides. Some unfortunately met their end in the Civil War and died in battle. Fortunately, Daniel did not here. One thing someone pointed out on Find a Grave is the inscription is incorrect on here. We see 33rd Illinois Infantry, but apparently it should be 33rd Iowa Infantry. And I believe it's Company 1 from my readings, if I remember right, or Company I, actually. Probably the more well-known battles of the 33rd took part in the Battle of Jenkins Ferry, which actually involved the Union forces trying to retreat to Little Rock, from what I read. After 3 days of retreating, they encountered the Saline River at Jenkins Ferry. I guess engineers were trying to build a bridge, but however, a heavy downpour took place overnight. The roads turned to mud and the area became a swamp. Confederate forces would catch up with them and take position on the ridges above them. Soldiers recall that there being several inches of water during the battle, and at one point knee-deep in mud and water. The attacks from the Confederates were uncoordinated, and breaking the Union wasn't going well for the Confederates. And this is most likely because the Union force was led by Frederick Steele, one of the more well-known tactical commanders during the Civil War. The Confederate generals at the time were attacking slowly or like kind of step by step, so they were just taking their time, and this led to Steele picking off their forces easily and delivering heavy casualties to the Confederate force, because there was like kind of like a concentrated area where the Confederates had to attack to be effective in the fight. Again, this was like kind of a swampy fight, not a whole lot of room to maneuver. So Union soldiers concentrated on that zone and just picked them off one by one. The Union forces would eventually get over this saline river via a pontoon bridge they were carrying. Steele would order the cutting and burning of that pontoon bridge to prevent Confederates from following them during their evacuation. This turned out to be a big loss to Confederates in a sense, because this was their chance to destroy Steele's army, which was the biggest force in Arkansas during the Civil War. A little hidden one of the lawn styles, took a while to find, is Washington Irving Jones, born in 1835 in Wisconsin and another Civil War vet. He was in Company G of the 12th Wisconsin Volunteers. Company G was out of Wood and Marathon County in Wisconsin from my readings. They were involved with the Siege of Vicksburg, battles at Kennesaw Mountain, Bentonville, and more importantly in the Battle of Atlanta. This was the battle where General William T. Sherman and General James B. McPherson would cause the fall of Atlanta. Upon the Confederate Army evacuation from Atlanta, Confederate Commander Hood ordered the purposeful burning of the military facilities. I'm guessing he didn't want the Union soldiers gaining any ammunition, if you will. That would be my guess, or supplies. This battle was primarily covered by the Northern newspaper during the Civil War and further boosted morale of the news that Atlanta fell for the Union Army. This event would actually cause Lincoln to be reelected by a significant margin. Okay, the sun's coming up, so hopefully it won't bleach out the shot. And a little tough for me to read John H. Creamer's Headstone. He was born in 1837 in Germany, fought for Company C of the Kansas Infantry, so it's another Civil War vet. They saw around 12 engagements, I believe, that were on the list. One of the more famous ones was the Battle of Atlanta, and we just talked about it with Washington Irving Jones' story on how Hood purposely ordered the burning of his military facilities. If you've seen the film Gone with the Wind in 1939, there's a famous scene in there known as the burning of Atlanta. An interesting bit of information was John's wife, Frances Jane Clark Creamer. She's not buried here, but I'll try to put a picture of her headstone in the vid. She kind of had like a military Civil War style headstone when I clicked on her, and it got me interested in her story, and it shows her as being registered for the military service in the year 1911. She would die in the year 1918, however, and is buried at the Washington Veterans Home in Restal, Washington. However, someone on Find a Grave wrote on her little memorials, and I talked about this before, how you can do like a little digital memorial. Someone wrote Company D of the 76th PA Infantry on Francis's homepage. Not entirely sure on what they were referring to. Maybe she was a nurse during the Civil War. There was nurses that served during that time, and I think they referred to them as angels of the battlefield. Along the road where you pull into the cemetery, you'll find a little headstone up front, and it's Arcade Cemetery, donated by John C. Miller. And it has 1886 on it. So, John and Mary Miller were the individuals who donated the land for the cemetery in 1887, even though it says 1886. They got married in 1870, and Mary was born in Virginia, but unsure where they met. They would have 5 children together, but 4 of them would die young. Perry would die at the age of 25, and I think I found his headstone. Ezra at 22, Ella at 18, that's a tough name, and John at age 12. From what I read, tuberculosis and scarlet fever were the big culprits of their deaths. One of their sons, George, would make it to the age of 67, though, and is buried at the cemetery, so maybe we'll come across him. Here is Perry Miller, son of Mary and John we just talked about. Appears he died of pneumonia, though. You can see a Woodman of the World marking on his headstone right up here. I don't know if it's visible on the camera. It's really kind of weathered for me to see. But Perry was well known and popular in the area from my readings. Uh-oh, neighbors are starting to wake up. Probably because I've been talking, so I haven't got yelled at yet. So here we have Francis M. Frank Kenon, born in 1845 in Hancock, Ohio. Veteran of the Civil War. You wouldn't know it though, because Usually we saw that unique type of military headstone. He was in the 33rd Iowa Volunteers. If you remember, Daniel Hutchison from earlier was part of the 33rd Iowa Infantry as well. He would marry Catherine here in 1877, then cross the plains in 1881 to Oregon, landing in the North Plains. Catherine was actually born in Prince Edward Island, Canada. Right, sorry about the sun. I could already see that big solar flare looking lens thing on my camera, so apologies. This is one of the more sadder stories in the cemetery of George S. Hutchison, who I believe was raised on the ridge from what the article described. George was only 35 when he died in a logging accident at Canyon Lumber Company. From what the story said, he was making his final tie to the logs, signaled for the donkey man to pull, and one of the logs struck another and went flying into the air. Unfortunately, George was the landing target for this log, crushing him. He was well known in the area, and in a cool little story, someone was just shopping in an antique shop and found this picture, and on the back of it said George S. Hutchison. So hopefully I can add it to the video for your viewing pleasure. And way in the back is George Washington Kelly. He was born in 1849 in Elkhart County, Indiana. George had a pretty rough upbringing. Upon moving to Lamport County, Indiana, his mother would die, leaving him an orphan at the age of only 9. George would enlist in the Union Army at the age of 14 and was wounded in battle in 1864. I couldn't find what exact battle or injury, but it must have been under the Indiana Regiment. He would survive, luckily, and marry a woman named Louisa Almira Wood Kelly, who's buried next to him, in 1871. George would work in the coal mines of Iowa for a bit. He would eventually leave Iowa and travel to Glencoe in 1879. It's not the typical war vet style headstone we've been seeing in the past, but this headstone design seems to be pretty similar in this cemetery. I'm seeing it a lot. Right here we have Catherine Kate Mcloyd. Hope I'm saying that right. She was born in Scotland. Angus is not her husband, obviously, based on the birth years. This is kind of a unique headstone where mother and son are listed. The reason I added this one to the talk was I noticed what someone said about Barlow Cemetery. We saw another Scottish headstone there. What we're seeing again is kind of like that little heart-shaped that we saw at Barlow, and still unsure if that's a Scottish thing or not, but thought I'd just add it to the video. Pretty unique. James here has 2 headstones, one for his Civil War service and one with his wife, Susanna. So here's James May Monroe May Jr., born in 1841 in Indiana. Served in Company K of the 1st Missouri Cavalry. Shows them in about 10 engagements overall. More importantly, they took part in the Battle of Fort Blankey, which was the last major battle of the Civil War, ending on April 9th. And reading up on the battle, it wasn't surprising. The Union apparently had 45,000 soldiers, and the Confederates only around 4K. Coincidentally, Robert E. Lee was surrendered just hours after Grant had defeated Lee at Appomattox, I don't know if I'm saying that right, courthouse on the morning of April 9th, 1865. And here is Phoebe Kenon Bennett. She is labeled as the first burial in this cemetery, and her baby. She died at the very young age of 32, so my guess is maybe her and her baby died during childbirth. Don't see a marker for her child. I'm trying to read the headstone and I can't really make it out, so maybe the baby's listed on there, but her year of death is 1886. So that's most likely why we have a soft establishment date of 1886. All right, time for the little tour. When you pull in, it's just going to be like kind of a gravel road, if you will, up to the cemetery. It's a little weird because there's 3 driveways. There's one to a private residence, and trust me, they let you know. And there's another one for a house, which maybe you can see it off in the distance there. That's that house. And then there's a little small path that says Arcade Cemetery up the road. And it definitely does sneak up on you. So just pull in, that's my advice, because I had some truck behind me really on my ass when I pulled in. So I just turned the wheel and ripped it into here, and luckily arrived. It is kind of out in the country. out in the boondocks. I don't know what the right word is, but it's kind of a cool one. Korea, a lot of war vets here so far. World War I. If you're interested in finding Daniel's headstone, it's the most clean in the cemetery, I'd say. But again, has apparently the wrong state labeled on it from what that person wrote down. And someone posted a cool picture of him, and hopefully I figured out how to put it in his segment. And that Mcloyd headstone's right next to the road, and again, that unique heart-shaped design. Here's a little plaque up front, headstone. We'll try to find John and Mary's headstone on our little tour here. Hopefully we could find it. Another one there, World War II. Another World War II headstone. Oh, this is neat. Check this out. World War I medical department. I don't think we've seen that yet for Iowa. There's a few firsts here. We got a fifer, Civil War, and a medical war vet. Pretty unique one with the open book. Didn't see anything on Stillwell. I think that was beyond the 1800s, maybe 1900s, maybe that's why. Kenon is in the center. Seeing that a lot of infant headstones here as well. I think that's like the third or fourth one I've seen. Oh, this one looks really old school. Yeah, born in 1825 and 1826. Isabel and Benjamin Jones. Didn't see their story, I don't believe. Here's a really neat one too. Hopefully I'm not in the shot. Well, yeah. Little inscription there, drawing. Maybe he was a hunter. About Kenon. World War I, Oregon. Another Kenon. Apparently a lot of war people in that family. There's a neat one, way over in the sunlight. Maurice Owens Rod is the nickname. But some symbolism. And the medal, Department of the Navy. That's neat. Two by themselves way over here. Atkinson. Ooh, sun's coming up. It's getting hot. I think these are more recent ones back here, perhaps. I always like these bench ones. Very unique. Like I said, I always feel weird sitting on them. I don't know if you're supposed to, but I just don't. I don't know. I feel weird about it. Tree over here. That's pretty cool. You can see they tried to repair it there. I don't know if you guys can see that. It looks like wire. It's not really an old one either. We got another park bench style. A lot of crunchy leaves. Oh, looks like Jeffrey died in 2007 in the Union. Isn't that what local 320 means? With the American flag. That's neat. It looks like Kim's still alive, and she likes dolphins. I'm more of a shark fan myself, I guess. I really like the dolphins. Like, I couldn't picture myself going to the Caribbean and saying, let's go swim with the dolphins. Like, no, I'm good. Another World War I vet. Here's Ferry, we talked about him. Woodsman of the World symbolism on his headstone. I can't make it out though, it's really wore down. Hopefully it showed up on the camera. I need to find ones who donated the land. I have not seen them so far. Maybe I missed their headstone. Here's a really unique one. Helgenson, and looks like there's kind of a totem pole. I wonder if there's some Native American relation there. And George and Louisa Kelly, talked about them. Pretty headstone. You've seen that before with the mountain on the headstone. Oh, that's a hole. think there's a few over here we haven't seen yet. We should be approaching the end of the tour. Nice one with the horse, salmon, and the buck. And this one has all types of stuff on it. Must have been an important person. Oh, Patricia and Rocco. That's the Francis, and she has a little, I'm assuming that's a little puppy or something. Horse, flower bouquets, big eagle or hawk up in the corner. And then a little inscription of a wolf. Let's see what she wrote on here. I've been given the stars and the sun to guide me and my mortal run. When my body's dust, my spirit free, and until next life, so mote it be. Very epic headstone. This one, not so much. Apparently it used to be something here. Yeah, it used to be a headstone because you can kind of see down there. I wonder who that belonged to. This is why you shouldn't worry in life or stress. Because you're going to be 6 feet under one day. Or be cremated and sprinkled into the ocean or a pond. Maybe a field if you're a farmer. But the lesson of the story is you shouldn't really stress about the stupid things in life. That's why you should go out and visit cemeteries. Puts things in perspective. Jamison Rooks. Oh, that's an old one too. I think that says 1864, 1884. Hard for me to read. Here's a neat one. Got like a little banjo on there. Don't know what that is. I can't make it out. Maybe you guys can. Death Ridge. That's a cool name. Yeah, here's another one. Fisherman. And that is it for this cemetery. It was a fun one. Very, very quiet. Besides the goats yelling earlier. But hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any recommendations on other cemeteries to visit in Oregon or even Washington, Southern Washington, feel free to leave a comment. Have a great day and stay safe.